Hi everyone, I'm Megan, and this is Beguiled by Books, where I share short reviews of books that I've read recently. Today, we're talking about my October reading wrap up. Let's get started. For me, October really signifies the end of the year. It's time to start winding down, starting our hibernation preparations, and celebrating a lot of the holidays that are in the last 3 months of the calendar year. Decorating the house for Halloween, hanging out with family, all of that fun stuff happens this time of year. And I did not read a whole lot in October. I did read 7 books, and I'm really excited to share them because they were a fun 7 books. The first book that I read in October was Hard Stuff, Easy Life. And this book came across my radar in a very roundabout way. Doesn't matter, but very roundabout way. And I really like Jay, the influencer who wrote the book. He's got a really successful social media following. I think he calls himself a transformational coach, and I can understand why. But I really liked his book. It is a self-help book, but I liked it because it consolidates so much information from so many other self-help books in a really punchy and easy to digest and short way. It's really putting the onus on the reader for accountability and just saying, look, if you want to change your life, there's no one responsible for that other than you. And here are some principles that are going to help you make those changes. And that's it. It's up to the reader. It's up to the person wanting to make those changes to do it. And he's a very no BS kind of guy. And I really enjoyed the book and the tone that came across in that book. Very compassionate, but also very no nonsense. So if you're looking for a self-help, but short, pithy, like gets to the point book, definitely recommend Hard Stuff, Easy Life. Just in time for Halloween, I did read Dracula, and I'm so glad that I revisited this book. I picked it up way back when in high school, wasn't really for me, and this book is great. It was absolutely wild compared to how it's been modified over the years through pop culture. It reminded me a lot of Frankenstein in that regard, where the original story has been so altered by media and pop culture over the years. And Dracula is really interesting and pretty fabulous, very descriptive, very vivid imagery. And the ending was not something that I expected. I knew the story, I knew the premise, but how the events transpired was the surprising part. So it was a fun reread. It was such a good thing to revisit before Halloween. And I definitely think if you have not read the original Bram Stoker Dracula, you definitely should. I read Murder Your Employer, which I have had on my shelf for quite a while. I wanted to read it very cheekily on my last work trip, but it didn't work out. I don't love packing physical books when I'm traveling. So I finally got around to reading Murder Your Employer, and it was really delightful. Again, very vivid imagery and very sassy, very cheeky, very snarky. There are some really good quips and one-liners in this book, and the author has quite the background of uh, storytelling and creativity. So this book was super fun. I loved the premise, and I think if you read it, you will probably like it. It's likely not what you expect. It's probably going to be better. And I just thought it was just a fun take on a typical murder mystery type novel. It's not a whodunit, which I don't love whodunits. And I really like that it was mysterious without ability to guess what happens. It was really well done. I was surprised, which doesn't often happen in mystery novels for me. So I really enjoyed this one. Now, this next book, I technically started 2 months ago and finished it very recently. And that book is The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. The Silmarillion is widely regarded to be one of the more difficult books to read in the fantasy realm because it's a compendium of histories and mythologies of Middle-earth. And I'm so glad I hadn't tried reading it until now because I got the Andy Serkis narrated audiobook and listened to that a lot on my travels over the last couple months. And I'm so glad I listened to the Silmarillion rather than read it because the lineages, the names, the titles, the locations, It's all very elven and dwarven in the Tolkien mythology, and a lot of those words are very similar. In my head, they're not actually that similar, but in my head, they're very similar. So being able to pace myself and go slowly, back things up to really absorb the pieces of information that I missed was really helpful. I think if I had actually read a version of this book, whether it's on a Kindle or a physical version, I probably would have DNF'd it just out of pure frustration. So I really enjoyed listening to Andy Serkis's narration of the Silmarillion. And of course, Andy Serkis, an amazing actor. He's known for his mocap work as Gollum. And I mean, his voices are incredible. His storytelling, his tone, his pacing, absolutely amazing. Absolutely loved the narrated version of the Silmarillion. So if you're a Tolkien fan and you haven't dipped your toe into that water, that's how I would recommend you do it. I read The Hacking of the American Mind by Robert Lustig, and this is a health book. It was published in 2017, and it's really all about how our neuroscience, our neurochemicals, has been altered by our diet and how important our diet is to having a happy and healthy life. Really, it's about sugar. Robert Lustig wrote a book prior to The Hacking of the American Mind called Fat Chance. Haven't read it, will read it soon. And in that book, he goes into detail about why sugar is so terrible and how it's affecting our youth. The author is a pediatric endocrinologist. That's a hard word to say. He has done tons of research to the point where he ended up going to law school to help understand how the laws got to where they are, allowing sugar in our daily lives, where things like cocaine is not allowed in our daily lives legally because of the chemical reactions it has in the brain, and yet sugar has an interesting similar chemical reaction to Schedule 1 substances. Fascinating look into that part of our brain, part of our makeup, our chemical makeup internally, talking about serotonin and the uptake inhibitors and how sugar affects dopamine and serotonin receptor. It's a really interesting, very detailed and nerdy book, but well worth the read if you're curious about, your brain health, your gut health, how all of this interacts with your diet and how sugar plays a massive part and how sugar has been able to sneak under the radar for so long and affect so many generations really negatively. And I say that having just consumed a giant sugar coffee beverage from a national chain. So I recognize the irony. We're still working on things and developing better habits over here, but the more you know, right? I picked up the Comfy Cozy Witch's Guide to Making Magic in Your Everyday Life at my local bookstore recently. And despite the lengthy name, it's actually quite a short book. And it's a really lovely little introduction to witchcraft and, again, making magic in your everyday life. If you are a fan or have seen a lot of the, manifestation and the witchcraft and the astrology things that have really become popular since the 2020 pandemic and lockdown started, the author's goal is to really say, hey, keep it low maintenance, keep it chill, do what makes sense to you in small little ways that you can make into different repeatable habits to make your life better and to make your life enjoyable. It doesn't have to be this arduous thing. It can be fun, it can be small and practicable. So it was a really cute little book into it. It's got some workbook elements in there. You can write right in the book if you have a physical version. Sweet little book, would definitely recommend if you're interested in opening up that door. I read Beguiled and the Tale of the Flame Fox, and this was a little kid's book that I picked up in Rovaniemi, Finland on my travels recently. And it is the mythology behind how the Aurora Borealis started. And it's such a sweet, beautifully illustrated kids book. It's such a sweet little tale. I can imagine, folks wanting to read it to their little ones when they're going to bed at night. It's so sweet and wholesome and delightful. And it is all about Lapland and how the Aurora began with the flame fox and then what happens when the stories kind of shift over time and getting to the source of the original story and what that means. It was such a sweet little delightful kids book. So wholesome. And if you like that, if you've got kids in your life, if you can find a copy, I will link to a US distributor below. And I'm not sure if they're going to be sold out or not by the time you click the link, but I will link to the US distributor so that you can hopefully check that out and order it maybe as a Christmas gift or something coming up for the littles in your life soon. What did you read in October? What should I read coming up in the next couple months? I'm always looking for things to add to my TBR. Please drop a comment below. And as always, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day.